I went from walking 5 miles one day to being confined to a wheelchair the next. Breast cancer that had eaten through my femur. I can't do things myself that I would want to do. I still hold out hope that I will someday again. Hope is my favorite word. I have been married to my husband, Brian, for going on 29 years. We have 3 amazing children, 2 girls and a boy. I enjoy anything that involves spending time with my family. I recently taught myself how to crochet so I can make baby blankets for future grandchildren. I just don't know if I'm going to be here. I want them to have them just in case I'm not. My name is Tammy. I was diagnosed early stage in 2014, metastatic in 2020, and I am located in Wisconsin. I went in for my very first mammogram at the age of 40, and they found a calcification or several calcifications at that time that they were going to watch. So they had me doing a mammogram every 6 months thereafter. 2 years later, after having 4 mammograms, they told me I was clear and I could go back to yearly mammograms. That was in June. I had found a lump in my left breast shortly before that June mammogram and brought it up. And they said the mammogram was clear. There wasn't anything there, nothing to worry about, and I should just continue on. And so I did. And as luck had it, or not, I'm not sure how you would look at it, but I tore my biceps tendon in January and was going to have a repair done to my shoulder. And I had to have a pre-op physical. So I went into my primary care doc and I said, hey, I've got this lump. It was physically like coming through the skin. And she took a look at it and looked at the mammogram and she said, it's just a cyst, just have that drained if it's bothering you. So in February of 2014, I went in for what I thought was a draining of a cyst and joking with the surgeon and how pretty he was going to make the scar so no one would ever be able to tell I had this done. And I was put under, and when I woke up, I saw my husband and the surgeon in the hallway. The anesthesiologist was holding my hand, and I knew immediately before they said a word that it was not a benign cyst. So that spiraled then into having the mastectomy, having chemotherapy, having radiation, and then starting on hormone therapy, which I was going to be on for 10 years. And I went on with life in 2019 where I was having right hip pain, and they did an x-ray and sent me to physical therapy and said that it wasn't anything. In 2020, we relocated to another part of Wisconsin, and I had to establish care with new doctors, which I did. I was having a lot of knee pain when I would run. It was during COVID. There wasn't much to do but run. And so I kind of chalked it up to that and saw my primary care. She did an x-ray. She said, listen to some physical therapy. I was doing that for about 6 weeks, wasn't making any progress. And eventually I just stopped going. And God bless my physical therapist. He called me one afternoon and said, hey, why aren't you coming anymore? And I said, no offense, you're a wonderful person, but you're not helping me one bit, and I'm not going to waste my time anymore. So he said, let's have you see one of our sports medicine doctors, and maybe they have some insight I don't have. So I met with one of them, and he said, oh, this is simple. You have a torn meniscus. And we're going to get in there. We'll schedule you for surgery. We'll clean it up. You'll be out running in 6 weeks. So he goes, but first we need to do an MRI. So they did the MRI. I didn't even make it home. And he was calling me and he said, I don't know how to tell you this because I deal with torn ACLs. That's the worst news I give to people. But there's something really wrong with your leg and the bone in your leg, in your femur, part of the knee. I don't know what this is, but it's way above what I see. So I was referred to oncology at that point in time. a biopsy was done and it was confirmed that it was breast cancer that had eaten through my femur. So I went from walking 5 miles one day to being confined to a wheelchair the next, for fear that it would fracture if I stepped down the wrong way. A PET scan later showed that right hip pain that I was complaining about, there were lesions on my right hip. And the L3, that was a benign issue, had completely fractured from cancer. Statistics for metastatic disease online through Dr. Google are very depressing, I guess, for lack of a better word. When I met with my oncologist and he told me that at best I could hope to live 18 months, at that point in time, that was very hard to hear. I immediately had my daughter, who was a freshman in college at that point. I had her come home, my oldest daughter come home, my son was living here, obviously, but I had the three of them come home. My husband and I sat down and we told them in person. But honestly, death, that's really, that's where I thought I was headed. And then there was a whole bunch of anger. There were things missed along the way and trying to process through how that happened. I had no family history, no risk factors. I had the genetic testing done. And at that point in 2014, I only qualified for the testing because of my age. But I didn't carry any of the genes that you can see in breast cancer. I had genetic testing done again, not too long ago, because there's so much more that they test for now than they did even in 2014. And I still, by their standards, have zero risk of cancer. My son was a sophomore in high school. I asked if I would see him graduate, and he said that was highly unlikely. I made it. I kind of took the second opinion thing to the extreme, and I got 6. So I wanted to make sure that I was completely comfortable with the path I was going to be on moving forward. So that's kind of the standing joke, is Tammy doesn't get, a second opinion, she gets 6 second opinions. But after then, talking to people and just doing my own advocacy for myself, I decided I needed to part ways with that oncologist. I didn't feel that we were on the same page. And I also knew that there were other options for me. So at that time, I underwent a full right hip replacement, stayed on the CDK4/6 for another full year under the guidance or the recommendation of my new oncologist. When that stopped working, we moved on to an oral chemotherapy. And I remained on that for a full year until April of 24. And then I had another progression and was started on a targeted therapy, an antibody drug conjugate, actually. And that's through an IV port. I had treatment for that every 3 weeks. And that started in April, and by the end of July, my scan showed no evidence of active disease. I continued the same treatment until December of 24. And then I stopped because I was having my left hip replaced due to the cancer and the radiation and all the damage that caused. And had a series of failed surgery after surgery after surgery for something that was supposed to be very simple, to the point where one of my doctors thought that I was going to have to amputate the leg at some point because of it, but it's still there. And then I resumed back on the same antibody drug conjugate in July, when my numbers started to creep up again, and I've been on that ever since, and they've dropped significantly. So the hope is we'll get back to no evidence of active disease in the next short while. Every 21 days, I have treatments on Tuesdays. On Fridays, I go in and I get a white blood cell booster so that my white blood cell count will allow me to have treatment on Tuesdays. That's every 21 days. I am fortunate, one of the fortunate ones, that my side effects are very manageable. You deal with the usual, hair loss, fatigue, nausea. But to me, I find it and acceptable, for lack of a better word, that, yep, this is what I have to do in order to stay alive. And it's just kind of a repetitive cycle of, okay, here we go. And you just hope it works for a long time to come. Every time I've had a progression with the oncologist I've had for the last several years, that's the first thing we look into, our clinical trials, and my eligibility for those. There's some question as to whether my estrogen receptor positive cancer has mutated to a triple negative. And some biopsies have indicated it's a possibility. That does kind of throw a little bit of a wrench in things. But we always look for clinical trials first before deciding on a treatment. So obviously I'm a big proponent of those, and hold out hope that I'll be able to participate at some point. The drug that I'm on now wasn't available to me, 3 years ago. So if it wasn't for people participating in the trials and the researchers looking into all, it's a game changer. When I had hair and I didn't look sick, or even now when I put a wig on and I go out, I think people fail to realize that you're still in treatment, that you still struggle. I was the mom that was doing everything, was involved in everything. And now, especially because I'm still not walking, I depend on people for everything in my day. And that's very difficult. But just stage 4 in general, I think people see you get asked all the time, oh, when are you done with treatment? And people do not understand that you're never going to be done. And they also don't understand that you're not going to die from stage 2 breast cancer. You are going to die from stage 4. And any research that we can do for stage 4 is going to benefit those early stages. But the statistics of living with stage 4 metastatic disease is daunting, honestly. I just passed my 5-year mark of an official diagnosis, although obviously I was dealing with it longer than that. And I've lost so many people I've come to know in the metastatic community. And I just don't think people realize that. I tell people now when I meet them and they're first diagnosed, that you just have to grant yourself grace. When I was, initially diagnosed, I kept thinking, especially in that first year, like, this is the last time, I'm going to have a vacation with my family, or this is the last time we're going to celebrate a holiday or a birthday. And that was really, really hard for me, that, every event seemed like it was its last one. And I specifically remember one time my daughters were home and I had baked a cake, and they were, I had gone upstairs to my room to change, and I came down and they had frosted the cake for me. And it was the worst job of frosting a cake I had ever seen. And I burst into tears and I said, I haven't even taught you how to frost a cake. Like, what else haven't I taught you that I'm not going to be here to teach you in the future? So that mindset was probably the hardest part. And now you just learn to accept the moment that you're in. Try to remain as positive as you can. I have a very strong faith that guides me in everything I do. That for me, the physical limitations are probably what is the greatest challenge. Because, your quality of life always has to come first. And, being pushed around in a wheelchair by your son or what, it's just difficult. So the physical challenges are, for me, I can't do things myself that I would want to do. I still hold out hope that I will someday again. Hope is my favorite word. You just can't give up that hope. I think if I had listened to a doctor, if I believed him when he said, sorry, you got 18 months. I think if I believed that, I wouldn't still be here. So I don't let people take away my hope. I understand that hope looks different for everybody. One of my daughters just got engaged. She'll be getting married next year. I never thought that I'd be here to see that day. Now I know I will be. I hope I'm here to see the next one get married, which will be the year after that. So, it's just, it's holding out hope for whatever that looks like for you in that moment, and just not letting go of that.